Hello and welcome to the announcement of our Panorama Flash Fiction Contest. I'm Sinéad and this is Orla from Sonder Magazine, an Irish literary journal publishing short stories, creative non-fiction, flash fiction and poetry. Copies of issue 4 are currently on sale. You can pick up a copy via our website and through our stockists, The Winding Stair and Marrowbone Books. You can find copies at the links below.
The Panorama Flash Fiction Contest was set up to invoke a sense of community. In a time where we must stay far apart, writing can bring us together while conveying a wide panorama of human experiences. We received an overwhelming number of submissions and are beyond grateful to every one of you. We are inspired that so many people continue to turn to creativity in a time like this. The winner will be published in issue 5 of Sonder Magazine later this year. The winning piece is also now available to read alongside our 2 runners-up on our website. You can find the link in the description box below. With no further ado, let's introduce the winners of the Panorama Contest 2021.
Our first runner-up is Carl Kinsella with his piece Coins on the Tongue. Carl is a writer from Dublin. He has written 66.3 thousand tweets and not as many works of literary merit, although we know he's written at least one work of literary merit because that is this piece. Carl offers an original perspective in this piece that made a lingering impact on both myself and Orla. The tone of writing alongside the slow reveal blew us away when reading. We are honoured to have this story published on our website, so welcome, Carl.
Coins on the Tongue by Carl Kinsella. She complained often about a feeling of grime on her hands and insisted that it was more than a feeling. That if she looked for more than a few seconds, she could really see grains of silt embedded in the grooves of her fingertips. It made her scared to touch her eyes. She thought it would make her blind. Sometimes I'd pretend to be reading or scrolling my phone and I'd watch her stare interminably at her hands. She would suck on her fingers in the hopes that her saliva would break up whatever it was on her fingertips. Even to ingest the dirt was apparently preferable to being reminded of it with every touch. At least swallowing it would get rid of it. She would wash her hands with dish soap over and over for just the momentary peace that would come before she had to touch or pick up the next thing that would inexorably stick to her and leave its malignant trace. Eating posed a near identical problem. Mucous membrane lumps of digested food that would glob onto her esophagus and make it hard for her to swallow, or make her tongue stick to the roof of her mouth. After every mouthful, she would bleach her throat with an upturned can mouthful of soda, a desperate attempt to erode the choking sensation. She would drink 6 Diet Cokes a day, and then she would tell me that she thought it was giving her osteoporosis, or some days cancer, or burning away the lining of her stomach. She'd get checkups at the dentist who'd tell her she needed fillings, and then she'd ghost the dentist. Coins were her biggest worry. I think she sincerely believed that she was allergic to steel. She could taste the metal when she held it in her hand. Stale and bloody taste, dirty, smudged with all the hands they'd passed through before. Sometimes she'd be on the verge of retching from the taste of filthy coins on her tongue, simply after throwing them in for bus fare. And guitar strings. Sometimes she'd play, and she wouldn't notice me watching her, lifting her fingers to her nostril and scrunching up her face before setting the guitar back down. At her funeral, I met her therapist, and we spoke a few words to each other. I was imagining that we were both totally mired in a sense of collective failure, but maybe it wasn't like that for him. Maybe this was just a perfunctory part of his job. He certainly spoke in a way that suggested some sense of remove, an elevation, like he was talking down to me when he told me to expect that her friends and family might now perceive me as a lighthouse in this time of sorrow. I guess that's the therapist's way of saying, you're the dead girlfriend guy now. He wasn't wrong, though, in the sense that the very sight of me seemed to warn people away. Looking at myself from the outside, this seemed reasonable. After the initial wave of sympathy, people automatically find you ghoulish. You don't really have the energy to blame them. They tolerate you, but sometimes you'll catch a note in their tone that tells you what they really think, that you should have the decency to stay home and haunt your own place. Parties are for the living, bro. Nobody wants to party at the lighthouse. You could tell that they were dying to talk about Yasmin, and that they couldn't do that in front of you. After all, it wasn't her that they really wanted to talk about, or that she was gone, but to use her as an instrument to play out their own little theories about life and death, speculate as to her motives, and rapidly transmit bursts of breathless gossip. Had there been a note? Previous attempts? Surely you should have been on the lookout for warning signs. Maybe they even wanted to blame me. That was fine. They could do that in front of me for all I cared. I certainly blame myself.
Our second runner-up is Rhiannon Jones with her piece First Home. Rhiannon is a writer currently based in London. She has work published by Hobart, Magdalen House and elsewhere. Upon reading this piece, we were both struck by the nostalgic retrospect of the narrator. Rhiannon does a terrific job in drawing the reader into a sense of space and familiarity. We are thrilled to share this piece with you. Welcome, Rhiannon.
First home. She might look different from how she was when you last saw her, my mother said. She's lost a lot of weight since she's been ill. I feel bad, I began. But my mother was saying hello to my grandmother's neighbour, Bruce, who sat outside his front door in a fold-out chair, his tattoos fading to blue. My mother knocked once and pushed the door open. My grandmother looked smaller. Her hair had thinned. "You look well," she exclaimed, with a glee that could only mean I had put on weight. When she stood, slowly as if trying it out, I tried to hide my astonishment at the skinniness of her legs. She was worried about the operation. She asked lots of questions, and my mother answered. My grandmother repeated the things we told her. They do these things all the time, don't they? And there's nothing to worry about. I'll be back home again the same day. What should I wear? She asked. My mother helped her to pick some loose blouses from her wardrobe. My grandmother lived alone in a hunched terrace, the house where my mother and her sisters were raised, and where my mother and I had lived intermittently when we were between houses, which was often. It was a house I'd been brought to as a newborn. I had been bathed in a sink bowl in front of the electric fire. At the butt of the avenue was a stinking black river. Behind it, an alleyway soured by split bin bags and dog shit. The houses had small gardens, yards really, so tightly packed that you couldn't not acknowledge your neighbours. That house was the first museum I ever knew, filled with strange and precious objects I was not allowed to touch. Plates which were not to eat from, but which were displayed on a shelf, showing scenes of thatched cottages and shire horses pulling wooden carts. In the drawers, in her talcum-smelling bedroom, buttons sorted as carefully as scientific specimens. Her jewellery box, plastic, with a rose printed on its lid, contained her mother's engagement ring, a lock of black hair that had belonged to the baby she had before my mum, the one who died, and my milk teeth, surprising in their primeval sharpness. To enter that jewellery box, which I did rarely, and only with my grandmother's strict supervision and quick, sharp hand slaps, felt like plunging into the cold, dark sea of our family, holding your breath all the way down, hoping your eyes adjust to the darkness enough to find the treasure. And photographs of people I'd never known. I wondered if people were kinder then. We helped her into the passenger seat of the car. I sat behind, like a child. The village was a single main road, factory road, between a chicken factory and an industrial estate. There was a railway station here once, my grandmother said. Took you to the coast. But they closed it, didn't they? She tittered. When I was expecting you, she said. That's where I met your grandfather, she said to me, rapping her finger against the window as we passed the church hall. But the less said about that, the better. I longed for my grandmother to tell me about her life, her childhood on the farm, meeting my grandfather at a dance, but she wasn't interested in those stories. Instead, she told me things like, I went to London once. Someone tried to charge me 9p for a cabbage. She gripped my arm as we led her through automatic doors into the hospital. When it was time for her to go into theatre, she held me for longer than usual. Her voice crackled in my ear. Love you. Love you. In the waiting room, my mother tapped her chewed fingernails against her knee. There's nothing to worry about, she said. I murmured my agreement. They do these things every day. she said. Don't they? She'll be back home later today.
And in first place, we have Cormac Culkeen with his harrowing flash fiction piece, Drifting. Cormac is a writer of poetry, fiction and short stories. He lives and works in Galway and is currently completing a BA Connect in creative writing in NUI Galway, returning to the university full-time as a mature student in 2018. His written work has been published in The Burning Bush, Skylight 47 and the Wild Word poetry magazines. He believes that writing should knock the air from a reader's lungs, give them something to go into the world with, or sit in their head like a waiting spider, sometimes all three. And that's certainly what we thought of this piece, because Cormac expertly plays with style and structure to place the reader firmly in the centre of the narrative and in the mind of the character. His dizzying descriptions and haunting atmosphere left us awestruck. This is a powerful piece that we are delighted to publish in issue 5 of Sonder Magazine. Please join us in congratulating Cormac Culkeen.
Hello there, I'm Cormac Culkeen, and this is Drifting. Jesus, this wind is cold. You can feel the north in it. All icy edges inside the neck and gusting numbness into the face. Even a hoodie won't stop it. The night sky is a black loom, and the stars are just hidden by the clouds, and the moon lights their edges with silver. I can hear some shouting already, and the roars echo back and forth as they wind down over the dank hills. I look at Alex lying beside me, and he looks at me, but it doesn't reach to his eyes. He only came along because of me, I know that. And the strands of moonlight make him look white, whiter than he is, and his eyes are looking on something through my head and beyond. And it hurts to turn my head, but I do, and I can just make out a break in the clouds, and the sky is like dark cobalt. It's beautiful, but I can see it and Alex can't. I look at the windscreen fractured with screeching lines, and the moonlight is like breakers in the ocean, all foaming white upon it. I can see the edge of the road off in the distance, too tall for me, for the car that we're in. I can remember the road leaving, the wheels, the spinning into black air with silence behind it, and the tree growing out of the headlights and snaring us out of the air, and something fell on us for the first time. At the edge of my eyes where it hurts to look, I see a sputter, then a drench of red, and a shape in the grasses below, and I know it's Barry, and he knows where the money is. I look at Alex again. My eyes are the only things that can move, and I know something terrible has happened. His eyes have dreamt up a surface of marble. He looks like a religious painting, and his life was a thread that brought him to this unknowing, where the world snatched him out and threw him elsewards. He didn't know anything. I want to make that clear. Oh, he didn't know. He was only along for the ride. I want to feel sad, but I can only remember how it feels, like hearing music drifting down a hallway, or notes of running water. It's strange to think like this detachment, each pulse of my head forming into the night air in droplets and floating away. This run would have made everything all right, a new clean road to turn upon. Now that's all gone too, every plan like a hissing ripple. Everything is closing in pockets about me, and I don't mind. There is now only my sliding racked pearls of breath, and a Cheshire crescent sneaks out from a seam in the clouds, and movements shadow into figures moving slowly hooked to the beams of their flashlights. The grass dances in the wind, offering up prayers, and I didn't think something could be so beautiful. There is movement up the tree, and a face that says because moves level with my door. And there's the creak of steel preferring its dents, and I don't want him to see my eyes. I don't want him to see I'm still here. I can feel it drifting with the wind, and I feel like spores cast into wet night as the door opens, as the light tips into height and distance. As I move, I can feel something vast, something welcoming. There is movement through everything, and I'm gone like a face in the curtains.
Congratulations to our winners. All 3 winning pieces are now available to read on our website, and Cormac's piece will also be published in issue 5 of Sonder Magazine, out later this year. Thank you once more to everyone who submitted. Your creativity and dedication never fails to amaze us. Copies of issue 4 are currently on sale. You can pick up a copy via our website or at the links below. We have one final announcement to make before we leave you.
Last year, the Morning Coffee Writing Competition was created in association with Sonder Magazine to fundraise for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. The idea behind the title is that even if the world is pretty dark at times, there are still nice bright things to get us through the day or up in the morning. We were overwhelmed by the response, receiving over 100 submissions and raising over €1,000 for the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre. Thanks to the kind support and generosity of everyone who submitted and donated, we proved that positives can come out of lockdown. We are thrilled to be back this year, overjoyed to be working with Carol from Morning Coffee, and what's more, we are ecstatic to welcome Kevin Power as this year's guest judge. Kevin Power is a writer and academic who's been awarded the Rooney Prize for Irish Literature. He teaches in the School of English, Trinity College, Dublin. White City, his highly acclaimed new novel, is out now. For those who aren't aware of the Dublin Rape Crisis Centre services, they offer a free confidential listening and support service for women and men who've been sexually abused at any time in their lives. They also run prevention campaigns. If you would like to learn more, visit their website, which is linked in the description box below. The winning story will be published on Sonder's website and in issue 6 of the magazine, and the winner will receive a book voucher for an independent bookshop of their choice to the value of €20. The stories to place second and third will be published on our website. The entry is minimum €6.50, but larger donations are encouraged if you're able or willing and passionate about the cause. All proceeds will go directly to the Rape Crisis Centre. Submissions open on June 17th in 1 week's time. We can't wait to read what you come up with.
Thanks everyone for tuning in, and congratulations again to our winners. Catch you later, alligators. Bye.